Irrational Games. These are the guys behind BioShock.
Even further back, the people behind System Shock, which was huge on the PC in the late 90s. And they are closing their doors after they release the second part of the BioShock Infinite DLC, Burial at Sea Part 2. I think this is noteworthy for a couple of reasons, and I think both reasons kind of take the conversation in different directions, so I'll make my 2 bullet points. One, this is, I think, further proof of why the modern idea of a quote-unquote AAA game or a AAA game studio is bad. These studios cannot support the weight of what they're producing anymore.
Really?
When Capcom calls something like 5 million sales of Resident Evil 6 a failure, when something like BioShock Infinite gets the critical acclaim and the sales that it does, and these studios still have to shutter, that means they can't support themselves anymore.
So what's going on there? Is the fact that they're just bloated, there's too many employees, too much overhead? Since there's so many expectations of these big budget AAA titles that if only one falters a little bit, the whole thing collapses.
Let me try to phrase it as directly as I can. For instance, BioShock Infinite was supposed to initially have multiplayer modes.
Okay.
All right. All throughout BioShock Infinite's development, there was talk of these modes that they had planned and that they had pulled out of the game. BioShock, System Shock, the Shock games in general have always been heavily narrative focused. They've been first person, but the focus hasn't always. Nothing about any Shock game has ever screamed to me, this would be great in multiplayer. Okay? Sure. So why are you going to try to shoehorn multiplayer into something? You've wasted all that time, money, and resources on trying to put something into a game that doesn't need to be there, and then you pull it out. It's money wasted. So yes, it's overreaching on the part of these AAA studios to feel like they have to include everything inside one game. There has to be side quests. There has to be...
They're going for the entire market.
Right.
They're going for the multiplayer folks. They're going for the single-player story folks. The cinema. And now, unfortunately, games are planned and they're also produced as big-budget movies.
Right. But all I'm saying is we've gotten to the point where these games are costing more than what they're worth, and we're not even seeing in the final product some of these things that this money has been spent on.
Sure.
It's poor planning, it's poor spending, it's idiotic. You look at something like, and I didn't like it as much as past efforts, it's like maybe even Oblivion or Morrowind, but look at something like Skyrim, which just refused to put a multiplayer aspect in. Why? There's no way they could do it. It didn't siphon off their resources. You know, it's smart thinking. Don't put multiplayer into something that doesn't need or beg of multiplayer. Everything that's a first-person shooter, and I'm focusing too much on multiplayer now, but everything that's a first-person shooter feels like they have to put it in. But you know what? The servers are dead in a month and a half's time. Why? Because everyone goes back to Halo or Call of Duty. So stop trying. A first-person shooter is not going to... You're not going to pull a significant enough piece of that pie away from Call of Duty or Halo or whatever the other first-person shooter is to warrant you putting this money in. So back to the original point. Stop trying to put things in that are just going to get scrapped and cost money. The other thing is, you know, I don't want to say decadence, and I don't know a whole lot about Irrational, but one of the pictures that's been going around shows a giant life-size statue of a Big Daddy from BioShock, you know, sitting in the front office, and everything is well-designed and nicely designed. And I think it's this situation where some of these companies start living outside of their means and they get bloated, and you know, the higher ups want more out of them, and then they can't.
That comes from the top, though. The fact of the matter is, you have to, if you're running a business, you're managing something, you have to know how to spend your money wisely. You have to know how to plan ahead.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and I don't think any of these video game companies really know how to do that.
So there's basically, I don't want to say they don't know what they're doing, but there's some trouble in terms of maybe it's the video game culture where everyone sees another big EA and they want to be the big. Everyone wants to be EA. Everyone wants to be, you know, Ubisoft. When really they should try to just hunker down and streamline and just make games and hopefully not go belly up like these guys.
And I think there's a disconnect too between what they think we want and what players actually want.
Sure, we've been saying that for years. I mean, everyone's been saying that.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, once again, you look at something like BioShock Infinite that came out in a form that most people were happy with. I know a lot of people who didn't like it, and I've never played it, but had that been their goal going in, this streamlined, focused sort of idea that they wanted to create, they could have done it with less manpower and less money, and people wouldn't be out jobs. The second problem I have with this is how it's been phrased, and I'm not gonna crucify the guy yet because I feel like
Crucify me.
I feel like
Testify.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been said, but the way Ken Levine, the head of Irrational, has kind of worded this is that he no longer wants to work with a big game company, so he's just going to lay all these people off, and he's going to take 15 people, and he's going to start a smaller game company because that's going to allow him to do what he wants to do, which is make narrative-focused games.
Versus selling the company to someone else, or versus splitting it and then giving up ownership. And that just sounds fishy, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It does. It sounds like someone else is
cop-out.
It also sounds like someone else is forcing his hand. But that's got to be the worst way to announce like 200 plus people out of a job, is be like, you know what, I don't need all you to make these games. I'm just going to grab a smaller piece of the pie and, go do this on my own. The thing with Irrational, though, is I think it got so linked to Levine that you can't... You can't necessarily... When you get these big-name developers, right, who head up these companies, when they leave, too many people look at that as the company gone. So Irrational without Levine is not Irrational, is basically what I'm getting at.
According to this article, Levine has chosen to hand over the BioShock series to 2K for further development.
Right, which is how they handled BioShock 2, which got panned. Well, I don't know if it got panned, but it certainly didn't turn out well.
It was somewhat of a cash-in.
Yeah. So, that's what you can expect from the BioShock series from this point forward. The brains behind it is gone.
And maybe all the artistic sort of direction
that
made it original in the first place.
So
you want this is here's his comment. There's no way from Levine, Ken Levine. There's no great way to lay people off, and our first concern is to make sure that the people who are leaving have as much support as we can give them during this transition. Besides financial support, the staff will have access to the studio for a period of time to say their goodbyes and put together their portfolios. Other Take-Two studios will be on hand to discuss opportunities within the company, and we'll be hosting a recruiting day inside their own studio, I guess, where we'll be giving third-party studios and publishers a chance to hold interviews with departing Irrational staff.
You just got shit canned, but let's have a job fair with free donuts before you take off. The truth of the matter is, in video games, this is how it works. People don't necessarily get... A lot of those people in that 200 probably were not permanent members of Irrational. And this is part of the problem with game development as it is now. These guys who do all this work, these guys and girls who do all this work, they don't have any fucking job security. They get hired on for the duration of a game, and then it's, well, too bad, you have to go find another job.
Yeah,
but
it's almost like they're contract jobs, but not really.
Yeah, but now the entire studio is getting disbanded, which just makes matters worse. So my heart goes out to anyone who's been affected by this. If there's anything I've learned about studios being disbanded, it's that other studios look out for other programmers, graphic designers, artists, everyone in the field. They really look out for each other, and I think a lot of these people are going to land on their feet, and that's good. What's bad is the video game model that has got us to this point where this is a regular occurrence.
Well, yeah, I mean, I look at it, once you get to this large level, like I said, it's almost like a movie company. So from job to job, you could have the same core team set for certain parts of the game. You'll have one, hopefully, team of the 3D modelers. One could be the art design. One part could be, the gameplay. I don't know. You see what I mean? There'll be teams that move from job to job, hopefully.
Sure, but it shouldn't... I kind of get what you're saying. Like, if each team moves as a unit and they get some clout and some name for themselves, but it would be better for everyone if you could just if each studio can nail down their core. There'd be consistency among games. There'd be consistency among sequels. In that sort of environment, creative things grow. I mean,
you're saying it may not happen enough.
That's how Irrational happened. I mean, like they got there by having core people. Bullfrog was a solid development house for so long because they worked with similar people in the same teams, and they got these great ideas that started in one game and matured in another game. And when you fragment the industry up like that, you're not going to get that.
So, end of an era, I guess. Well, I mean, they're still going to put out some BioShock games in the future, but they won't be the same.
Well, yeah, Irrational's putting out the last DLC, like I said. They'll put out BioShock. 2K will put out BioShock games. And, Ken Levine's team is going to move on and do digital releases that are going to be narrative focused. And the only good thing I can say, the only thing that I can hope that comes out of this is that Levine, and I don't want to think he is, but isn't as egocentric as what's being printed makes him sound. But two, maybe this is what needs to happen before we start and we get back to a good spot in this. Maybe we do need to see a lot of this happen where people hunker down and focus into 15-person teams where they all are on the same page and they make these games. And maybe that'll last. Maybe that's a relationship that'll last. Maybe his new 15-person unit will be far more rock solid. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
but can you put out, let's just say there's a new Bioshock game, would you be able to put that out with a 15-person team? A game of that scale?
I don't know. No, you wouldn't be able to. But what I'm saying is, I mean, I'm hoping we're getting to the point where maybe from the ground up, people will pick and choose a little bit better and end up with teams that they want to keep for the long run. I don't know. It sucks. I'm tired of flipping on the computer every month and seeing that 200 people in the video game industry that just put out a game that sold millions of fucking copies are out of jobs.
The bad part about it, too, is that it sort of stunts creative growth because you're going to try to play it safe and do, like we always make fun of, Call of Duty sort of franchise where they put out the same game every year because they know it's financially viable and don't go into artistic direction.
Well, but this turned out, it seemed like this was financially viable, but yes, you're kind of on the same page as what I was saying earlier.
But it wasn't, though, because it wasn't like you were seeing a Bioshock game even every 3 years. There's the amount of space in between was larger.
Oh, no, it was. But what I'm saying is it stunts creative growth. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if you keep moving people around and you can't keep one group of people focused on one idea or one story arc, it's never going to blossom into what you hope it's going to blossom into. And yeah, you're just going to get cookie cutter bullshit.